I'm not going to jump as arranged here because I'm still talking about users related items. I don't want to jump into product yet, and I want to do something that relates to all projects. So like users relate to all projects irrespective of kind of, but product is specific to Agro is and some other kind of project like that. So the next thing I will talk about, and if you understand it, you would even be able to handle the rest. So let's say we want to then jump on roles, which is directly related to users now. So if you are jumping on roles now, so if we jump on roles, so we say roles like this. So I'll make it title. Now, so row be telling me if you understand what we did here. Tell me what a role table should have, a role entity should have.
User ID.
User ID?
Yes.
No. So it's a good one, though, because what he said, it might be correct in some instance. But we want to keep row and we want to keep user row separate. So here,
okay.
yeah. So here we want to. This is going to be dedicated for row alone. We are not missing rice and beans, just rows. Everything you see here are the different type of rows we have, all the various rows we've got. All right. So the first thing will be the ID. You see all tables must have an identity. That's their primary key. All table, what you have here is the PK. That's the primary key of this of that record. Each record would have a PK. All right. So and the ID is the primary key. So the primary key is pretty much an identifier of the particular record. So and that will help your DSA, because when you go to database now, and you guys already did that in the sample that we did that we are saving to file system or local storage. You give a random ID, a user an ID that enables for effective search, so that you can have an O of 1 search. So when you get to the database, when you say number one, only one person answers number one at a time. So only one person answers, irrespective of the number of records you have. If you have 1 million record and you say number 20, only one person answers at a time. But if you have 1 million record and you say Mustafa, and if you happen to be in some part of the north and you have out of your 1,000 record, maybe 999 of them are Mustafa, then you are in trouble. Then your application is going to be very slow and everything like that. So there has to be a PK. So you see all tables will have and an ID, which is the primary key of that ID, which is the unique identifier of each of the record, right, that we are going to be having. So this row here has its ID. You can see the user here has his ID, and each of them will have their IDs. Now, the next thing would be the name of a row, the name of that row. For instance, manager. For instance, senior manager. For instance, coach. For instance, a teller. For instance, something like that. So you have several rows. For instance, if you are talking about Agro is now, you can create a row called user manager. You can create a row called farm manager. Let's say you want to be able, you are big, the Agro is big, such that it has several administrators, and you want some administrators to be able to manage some section of the application, but not all. So you can just come here, you say you create a role, you call it farm manager, farmer manager, you call it users manager, product manager, you have order manager or something like that. These are various roles, but you are creating a house for a property for them, right? So a key for them. So you're going to have a role name. That's that.
Recording stopped.
To house various roles, and then you're going to have row descriptions to describe the role, so that if you create a role now, you can describe it. If you say farm manager, you say uh, uh, responsible for managing all farmers, and that will be the description. Let's say you say general manager, you write a description, responsible for, oversees all affairs across multiple domains. You give a description. This is not, you may, or most of the times maybe you can make descriptions as not label, but what is important might be just role. Then you can have basically date created by, last modified by, so you can have this one. This is as simple as this. There's nothing else for this. The only thing is that if you want to help the front end to be a bit creative, maybe you want to give it an icon, so that each row will have its own icon. Like icon, by icon I mean an image, so that when they are creating a row, they will equally create. So that if they want to show and they want to make it dynamic, instead of randomly, they want to implement certain things in the front end, and they want to show icon and then show row by the side. You just want to do some sort of design, just like we have here. We have on Zoom, where you have mute icon, you have mute beside it and below it. You have the stop video, have the icon, you have the description below it. If they want to do some sort of something like that in the front end, and they want to it dynamic, that they can change the icon dynamically even when the application when the application is deployed, you may have this. But it's not like it's a compulsory item to have for anything. So basically your rows, this should be it. Anything extra, can anybody think of anything extra? Anything extra I think should be unnecessary. So the next thing you then look at, this is all these things we've been talking about here is a one-to-one scenario. Now, so let's migrate into something more. So let's say users role now, or user roles. So now, because you can see here, just like I demonstrated this, I think I should demonstrate this as well. Something like how this will look like. This is an instance of a role. So let's say how it will look. We'll see it in practical on an actual database. So let's say we insert a row like this. We insert a table like this. How this could turn out to look like. So I may not finish everything. So you have, this is ID, this is row name, this is example row name, this is row description, maybe this is the icon, and so on and so forth. Date created by. So insert a column to the right, date created by, last modified by. You can add it yourself. So you can have a row, let's say an ID1, and then let's say the row name is, you give any, they will be supplying from the front end. They create a form where people fill the form and do a post request where you can save it. So whatever it is, so you have manager. And this user row, nobody remember gender when I wrote male now. So you can also have gender if it is compulsory. You can also have gender. So where you have male, female, and all of those things like that. So let's say a role name is super admin. The description could be the overall administrator. An icon, they say whatever it is, let's say it's called row1.png, whatever they submit, and then date created can be let's say 5, 10, 20, 22, and most of the times it's going to be date time. The time it was created, let's say 11:40. Then you can have another record, say number 2, and then you say this one is just an ordinary admin. So you can say ordinary admin. So let me use, let me use something else. So let's say manager, or you call it user manager. Manages all users. Let's say this one is row2.png, whatever it is. So this is a sample record, how it will look like, and this is the IDs and all of that like that. This is how this will transform into eventually, and would have multiple records. As more and more records are being created, that's how it's going to look. Now, the user's role is pretty much a pivot table. It is a pivot table that resolves relationship that exists between a user and a role, because you know you have these users here. This user will have roles. So the user's roles tells us what role does the user have. That's what user role is saying. It resolves roles with users to tell us what role a particular user is having. Alright? So itself will have its own ID. Itself will have its own ID. Then it will have user ID. And then it will have row ID. Now this user ID is coming from this table. So in this case here, if it is Mustafa, his user ID will be 2. If it's anonymous, ID will be 1. If it's another person, we have his ID. That is the user ID that is donated by that. Then the row ID is whichever row you're giving to that person. So if I say user 2 is having row 2, it means that that person is a user manager. So this table basically tells us relationship that exists between the users and these things. And this kind of scenario is a case where a user is actually many to many. This scenario here, this table arrangement here, is called many to many. Many to many is a relationship that exists when many items from a particular entity can be related to multiple items in another entity. What am I saying? In this case, multiple users can be user managers. Multiple users. We can say Mustafa is a user manager, and also say Chukwebuka is a user manager, and also say Muhyiddin is also a user manager. We are assigning multiple users to the same role, and assigning multiple roles to the same user. All right, it's possible. This scenario here is this table arrangement also makes it possible that a user can have multiple roles. Right? This same scenario here, if you keep this table like this, Mustafa can have multiple roles. If you keep this table like this, that is why we call it multiple. We call it one to many, many to many, so to speak. Multiple users can have the same role, same role. Multiple users and same user can have multiple roles. Multiple users can have the same role. Like I said, assigning user manager to Memuna, to Adetola Adeyeye, to the same Biamin Abbas, the same role, all of them the same role. And then I can then assign multiple roles to a particular user. What am I saying? It's possible that, let's say, just like, let me paint scenario of the Tyler session that we are having now. All of you guys, let's say you have a role, you have a user type, fellows. Let's say that's your user type fellow, and then we then say assign a role to some of you. Let's say some of you are head of house, some of you, that's a role, let's say head of house. Some of you are, now we are now having, let's say, class governor, that's a role. But it's possible that at the same time the class governor becomes the head of house. That fellow is having multiple roles at the time. Is a governor and equally the head of house. Now that is
in fact, it's happening. It's happening now.
Can you imagine? So if you look at it,
current head of
the current head of the house is the class rep. It is the class governor in a particular track
for front end.
So you see what I'm saying? So that's a scenario where a user have multiple roles, and then you can then see that if the multiple roles can also be assigned. If you look at it from one angle, you will say it's one to many. So if we handle that here, if you put that role ID in this place, if you put that role ID in this place, instead of, if you put it inside users table, it will be one to many. One to many on the part of role, but one to one on the part of user. One to many on the part of role, and one to one on the part of user. You will see it when, let me illustrate it. I think it should be easier. It's easier than all this English I'm speaking. I'm the one that is making it. So, but try to understand. Now, so if we create a table like this, let me create a table so you can understand it. So let me just create multiple record like this. So let's say we have an ID, you have user ID, and you have row ID. Now let me create more. Let's say here we have 3. Let me create another row. Here, let's say you have farmer manager. So this guy manages all farmers. Let's say this in row 3.png, and the day was created. Now, so let's say this one, the pivot ID is ID1, and the user ID is let's say I'm talking to Mustafa. So here, when I put 2 here, I mean Mustafa. So I come here, I put 2, and then I come here. If I need to assign Mustafa user manager, I assign him 2. But I may, I assign. So what I'm saying here is that user Mustafa, the user with ID 2, has role with ID 2. So it means Mustafa is the user manager. I can also come down here, ID 2, and say, let's say we have another user here, 3. So let's say I have Memuna. I don't know how you spell your Memuna. This
M-A-Y.
is not. Is this how you spell it? Is this how it is in your credentials?
No.
So I know this
My
one
daddy
is-
and my mommy did not.
So your I know this one is a funkified name. So but let's keep your funkification. So let's say
Yeah.
Memuna, let's say we have Bogaji. So let's say we have something like this. Do you have a middle name? Memuna?
Yes, sir.
What?
Adebisi.
Adebisi. So let's say we have that bc at me.com, whatever. Now, if we come here and we say this ID here, this is the ID of this table, right? Then I come here, I say ID 3, I'm talking to Medina. Why? And we are just running it. We are running it. This thing here, we call it, during design session, we call it running. When things are when things are blocked, when they are not clear. By the time you start drawing this thing in your book, you know you are having a pen or chalkboard. By the time you start drawing this, things become clearer. So this is called running. When you run it, you see how things will show. Now, this is 2. Now you say users with ID 3. You can also assign him row 2. So what you are assigning multiple rows. You are assigning the same row to multiple users. That's what you are doing. You are assigning the same row to multiple users, right? So, and that's why you are calling it many to many. Now I can come here again and say number 3. Say Mustafa that was here, that I already assigned him user manager. I can come again here if I need to give him another, and also give him farm manager. You see the row here, the rows here. I give him 3, right? So this guy is having 2 rows. Is a user manager and also a farm manager. Meanwhile, Memuna is only a user manager. So you can see user with ID 2 having row ID 2, user with ID 2 again having this thing. So this arrangement allows multiple records. But you see in this table here, you can have Mustafa these things twice. You can only have him once. But in here, you can have him repeatedly. In fact, you can have him come again. So if you have your design like this design is called many to many, because this design here is called many to many design. Is many to many because it allows multiple items to be associated with multiple items, multiple users being associated with multiple. And this is how your order table will also look like, because multiple people can come and order. You know, multiple people can order multiple times, but sorry, your order ID is going to be one to many, but order ID can only be assigned to you can have order ID, the same order being assigned to multiple people. Order ID is unique because each order is unique, but your products order, you know, because the same products can be ordered by multiple people. Multiple people can be ordering the same item, so, and the same product can be ordered by multiple people like that. So that one is going to be many to many. So this arrangement here is many to many. If you still have some doubt, things will become clearer as we progress. Things will become clearer as we progress. You know, this is the many to many. Now if we wanted to, we could have handled this one to many. If in our organization, as it is in some organization, one user can only have one same role as a time. If you go to CBN, for instance, only one user is the CBN governor. You know, only one user, but you can have multiple users who are deputy governors. You know, there are several deputy governors in CBN. You have deputy governors this, deputy governors that, deputy governor this. You understand? But only one user is a governor. And if you are designing so for those that are doing HR kind of application, if you are designing something to be able to capture this scenario where some roles can be assigned to multiple people, but some other roles can only be assigned to some people. And in a standard organization like that, one person is only answering a role at a time. If you're a deputy governor, you're a deputy governor. You can only be promoted to a governor or you are retired. So, or you commit an offense, you are demoted to a less role or something like that. So if you want to have some kind of one to many scenario, because in that scenario where only one person, you can only have one role at a time, in that kind of scenario, this is your table, even though it will do it, but it can be easily messed up if you design it like this. So if a role can only be assigned to a user at a time, if a user can only have one row at a time, then you are going to resolve it straight inside this users table. Inside this users table, you are going to have the row ID. You are going to have his row ID. So each time he gets promoted, his row will change. Each time he commits an offense and is demoted, his row will change. So this case will be one to many, because that row here, you can, so if it's a one to many, if we are resolving row as one to many, for instance, let me paint this thing here. Then this let's say you have an additional column. I'm getting this thing, and this thing is getting long, so let's say we have row ID, and then in this row ID now, I'm painting a scenario of one to many for row. So here you have, if you come back to this row table, if I come here, I say 1, and then let's say I say this person is row 2 or row 3. It doesn't have to come in order. Or this person is even the one that is having row 3. This one is having row of 1, and then this one is having row of 2. So that the things are not in order. So you don't think if it is because this one is 2, this one 2 must be 2, because this one is 1. So this one is a primary key, and then this one is a foreign key here. This one is a foreign key coming from the row table. The same way this one is a foreign key. So this one here is the primary key. This one is a foreign key. We can have a complex scenario of composite primary key, but let's just deal with basics. So here you have, this one is a foreign key as well, like that. So in this case here, you see this person anonymous is of row 3, which is what's that, row 3, which is farmer manager, and then Mustafa is of row 1, which is the super admin, and this thing like that. So if this one here, you can just have it like that, but then it's also possible that this Memuna is also of row 1, and this is why it becomes one to many. So, and even all of them can be of row 1. So even though a user cannot have more than one row at a time, but the same row can be shared with multiple people at a time. You can have multiple deputy governor at a time, but it can only be a deputy governor at a time. But several people can be on the same cadre at a time. This one is a case of where several people are on the same cadre. So, but like that. So this guy can only have one row at a time. If his row changes, this guy from one, all of them started at the same role. Maybe this guy now got promoted to 2, and other guys remains on 1. That is a one to many scenario, which is resolved within this thing. So from one perspective, it looks like 1 to 1. From the other perspective, so if you look at it from user's perspective, is 1 to 1. One user to a row at a time, 1 to 1. One user to a role at a time. But from the row perspective, which is coming as a foreign key, multiple roles can be assigned to multiple users, or same role can be assigned to multiple users, which will make it one to many. Same role can be assigned to multiple users. In this case, row 1 and row 1 is assigned to multiple users. I'm sweating too much. Can you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Who mentioned gender? Did you mention?
Yes.
Did you mention gender after I've written it, or you mentioned gender before it was written? Bilyamin Abbas. So you guys get it a bit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think let's make sense of what we have, so you guys we can wrap up this session. Let's make sense of what we already designed. Let's make sense of it, so you guys can, deal with the. So if you have product 2, you just begin to talk about product, product name, product price, product category. So when you come to category, you then have to need to have another table. So because multiple categories, people can, so you can have something like product category and all of that. But like I said, let's make sense of what we have. Let's have a closed cycle categories like that. So here we have now to make sense of this, like I told you, assuming you have done with your design, you have iterated. Design is usually not a one-time thing, and if it's a standard organization, so you have multiple people designing this together, just like we are doing it together. And everybody, if this is not your first, you already are experienced, you can mention, you can tell what we need to put and defend it. Please, if you find yourself in any company and during this design session, ensure you contribute. Please ensure you contribute, not just to say nonsense, but and this is part of why we're having this session as live. I could have recorded and sent it, but I wanted us to, so that it's participatory and you guys can have reference to it. And good enough, I'm recording it, and it can also come as record, and it's going to be smooth. When you are having a design session, ensure you contribute. Say something. Study your application ahead, whatever application that, because a document will be shared with you in a standard organization. Maybe FRD will be shared with you, and some other documents like that will be shared ahead of the design session. So when you guys get to the design session, they want people to talk. If you just keep quiet, even if you are very good, if you just keep quiet during design session, there's a way it's taken like you don't know it. Be active during design session. When you say talk about, just like Banshin mentioned Latin for his application, you say, let's say, because the person that is in charge, one person will be the one that is anchoring the session, doing this one. He may not mention something, so you will tell him. You can argue that something should be deleted. You can argue constructively. Like, let's say I'm doing a say it platform, and I'm putting latitude. I'm putting latitude and longitude. You can argue that this should be removed because people will feel threatened that their location will be known, even if the anchor, the person put it. You can argue that it should be removed because people don't want to know. They don't even want you to know them, that they are the one reporting. Talk more of you knowing their address, where they live, what they are currently are. It means someone can come and just take them off. So ensure that you make constructive contribution during any design session. It has a way of the organization rating you. And all those things will be part of what people will use to rate you and say, like, okay, that guy. So next design session, they will call you. They will call you that they know that guy would contribute. So in the case, especially when we have a lot of guys here, I usually sometimes, that design session is usually a very key session that you use to rate people. And sometimes they can give you an assignment. The boss can decide to just give it to you to design. More reward for good and hard work is more work. So, and that also have implication. More work, you also have more more promotions and more. If there's a need for us to maybe travel, you'll be the one that they will take. If there's a need for us to go and represent it, because at the point we had a need to say, we are talking to some guys in distance, they say if we would, we had to actually cut that conversation at some point. If you need to send your staff to represent them, to represent the company outside the company, the staff will, these are the kind of things that would make you be on the front burner. I'm just saying that. So now let's come back home. Let's make sense of what we've done. So it's now.
Sorry, sir. I
Yes,
have a question.
go ahead.
So sorry. Sorry to draw us back.
No, 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 no.
Just
I
going
need you
back.
guys to talk. Yes.
So based on what we've done so far, so I was thinking, for example, you mentioned for an entity for categories to list all the categories for products, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
So would it be a good idea to also have an attribute for calculated fields? For example, in categories, sometimes we might want to know the number of products in a certain category. So would it be okay to have an attribute for count of products? Or
Oh,
we just query that with
thank you,
like
thank you, thank you,
database queries?
thank you. You finish it up. You finish it up by your answer, the answer to your this thing. So you have you're keeping the various product category in a particular table, the various product categories. Then you resolve that with products, where you have products, you have category ID like that, whichever product that category belongs, and all of that, depending on whether one product can have multiple categories, because sometimes you have a product can belong in multiple categories, like a computer can belong in computer categories, can also be called an electronics and all of that like that. So you can have a kind of many to many relationship to it. Now, so the question that Bankshim asks now is that, will it be also okay to create a field, for the category count? Now, so it won't be necessary to keep that as a record, but during the before you send the data out to the front end in your query, you can, you are sending JSON, you are creating an object, and you are sending that. It's the same thing with even the row. You can send, like in most applications that we do, we usually send to the front end the number of users that have a particular row, but it's not like we are keeping it anywhere in the database. We are not keeping it in anywhere in the database, that this also, because that will require you to do multiple queries. Each time a new user has been created, you are populating that field. But during view, when you're creating your JSON object, or it's a view, or you are creating and all of that. Meanwhile, there is a question that I didn't answer yesterday. It just occurred to me after the session that I didn't. This guy mentioned, he asked a question about templates, that he was confused about templates, and I mentioned it a day earlier, that if a backend person can be an all-rounder, and most of the time they are always all-rounder, who knows what is going on in the front end. Because if you don't really know what is going on in the front end, I can tell you that most of the things that you are doing in the back end will be nonsense, because you don't know. You have to know how it will be used for you to cook it. You have to know how it will be used for you to cook it. You are the one cooking. So if you don't eat, you won't know if the food is sweet or not. That's why some people who fast, during fasting, they ask someone else to help them taste the food they are cooking. So if you're a backend developer and you want to have an architecture of an MVC, where everything is all encompassing without having it as a React and a Node separate, you can have a single base. Express that we are using can be used as a single code base for front end and back end together. You can use a single code base where you have your view and your logic, your model and controllers in the same code base without having to use Vue or use React. That is when you can use, so you can have your own HTML and all of those things. You can use those template engine for. But the best scenario is to have them separated, front end disjointed from the back end, such that It can be used anywhere in any application, either mobile application or front-end application. That's a by the way, that's it just came to me after the whole session because I was so exhausted that okay, I didn't even answer that one. So that goes to that. Now, Bangshim, I hope you get my point. We don't have to keep such record of like count of people that own that, like how many products belongs in a particular category and all of those things like that. Query does that. Is that it?
Okay, sir. Yes, I understand.
Okay, great. Good question. Very good question. So let's make sense of this so that we can go to rest and begin to go through the material one more time. So after having created this, it's time to jump into a tool of your choice. Either you're using Visual or you're using Mysql Workbench or you're using whatever it is you're using. It's time to then jump into it. So we have at least three tables now. So let's work with these 3 tables. You can see how long it took us to do that. Now so now let me say that I'm using the simplest tool that we are still going to be using for our backend development. So XAMPP. Does anyone have XAMPP installed? I know Tony is doing PHP development, so he would have.
So I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I never tried, but I wanted to know if a node program could be run with XAMPP.
Yeah, I can. And
possible.
Can you speak up?
Can you hear me better?
You wanted to know if.
Can you hear me better, sir?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. So I was asking if it's possible that a node program could run on XAMPP.
A Node.js application.
Yes, sir.
Could run as what?
Could run on XAMPP, like when you start your XAMPP, and then you can actually just where you make your GET request and
Sure. It can. XAMPP is a web server. XAMPP is you can call it a web server per se, but all-encompassing server, basically using it as a web server. So, but Node does not need a XAMPP. It doesn't need a XAMPP to run, but you can run a Node on a XAMPP, right? Because Node has its own server. You can run it just like we have been running the Node, just because it has its own runtime. But then you can run it on another web server. So you find this in live applications where you have a server, a bare server already existing, like a shared hosting server. So they already have their server, maybe Apache server, Nginx, IIS, whatever it is. They already have that server. Then you can then put Node on it. It's the same scenario as XAMPP, because XAMPP or WAMP is Windows Apache MySQL PHP. That's the initial this thing like that. Windows Apache using an Apache server. So most live server that you see online, whether shared hosting, VPS, and all, you are going to put a web server there. So a bare web server is already existing before you put a node on them. So it's not different from when you're using it locally. When you're using the Apache server locally and then you're putting a node on it. But what we are doing right now is not even that. We are using the XAMPP or WAMP. What we need in there is the database there. Is the MySQL there that we need right now. We are not using, we're going to be keeping our node separate. We are not running it on the XAMPP. Right?
Okay, sir.
Do you understand?
I do.
All right, good. So for some of you who already have WAMP or XAMPP installed, fine. If you don't, you may want to go to WAMP WAMP or XAMPP. Well, I prefer XAMPP for some reasons, but you can also do XAMPP. We used to do XAMPP. So you can, and if you are on MacBook, you can use MAMP. You use MAMP or XAMPP still. XAMPP is cross-platform, everywhere, so you can get the one for your platforms. So on the MacBook, we have the MAMP. We call it MAMP. So that's Mac, Apache, PHP MySQL. And then if it is on Linux, you can get LAMP or XAMPP still. So Linux, Apache, PHP MySQL. But in any case, what we need it for is not for, so you can just go to your apachefriend.org and download this XAMPP. So once you download it, so you can download any version of your platform. So if you are on Windows, if you are on Linux, if you are on Mac OS, so you download that. So you can see PHP all the time because it was actually made to run PHP server. So, but note, it comes handy with its own. It's a runtime itself, so it can actually run itself. So we have that. So you go ahead and download if you want to use XAMPP, or you can go to and download Mysql Workbench. So you can download Mysql Workbench, which is my own preferred tool for ERD anyway, because it gives you very clean this thing like that. So you can download Mysql Workbench and like that, and use it to manage your design. So you can see what you have here, and you can quickly do all of that. So in any case, just do anything you like. You can also use video and just go and download it and use. So I'm going to be using XAMPP. I have XAMPP installed here. Like I said, I don't have my Workbench installed on this machine I'm using. So once you have XAMPP installed, all you need to do is just start it, and you'll see the XAMPP control panel that you are seeing right here. So let me quickly explain a bit of what we have in here, because we'll still be needing it later on. What we are doing now is just database design though, but when we come to the actual database that we're talking to, starting database servers and all of those things, I will still explain this in a bit. But of course, I don't always like that people are saying what they don't understand. So because when I see something that I don't understand, I want to understand. So I suppose that you'll be curious too when you are seeing XAMPP and you don't even know what this is. Like, where I think I want to know this first before I even start using it, so that when I get lost, I know how to report myself. All right. So this thing that you're seeing here is this first thing here. Okay, first let me stop the server. Let me start.
Recording stopped.
Let me start like you would have started as a player. So let's say you have start like this, XAMPP control panel. You may also want to start it as an administrator because of so I think we have two of it started. Now the Apache is a web server, and while we're doing the introduction to the backend, we mentioned a couple of web servers like that, and we said there are a lot of them. Most popular, we have Apache server, you have Nginx server, you have Microsoft IIS, and all of those things. These are web server. They are responsible to make web servable. When you write your bare of your codes and you put it in a folder, you put it on a computer, whether a server or your local computer, you need this scene on the web browser without having to see the file paths and all of those things like that. So web server is responsible for making, serving, web applications. So the XAMPP is actually bundled with Apache, and that's the A in XAMPP is called Apache. So MySQL is a database that is also bundled with XAMPP. And like I said, we are going to be using MySQL database as a database for for the entire session, but we are not locked to it. And in fact, with time permit, I will also show us other database. The concept is what we are teaching. You are not, so you can also use the concept everywhere. All right, just like you are
Recording in progress.
Just like you are not boxed to XAMPP, you can use any this thing. Now, so MySQL is a database, a very good database for that matter, like that. So FileZilla is an FTP, a server that enables you to transfer files from one server or one computer to another, like that. That's what a file server is. And then Mercury is a mail server. So if you need to send mails and local mails and all of those things like that, and locally, so you can use Mercury. So Mercury, you can have your SMTP, your IMAP, and some of you guys who are, depending on your business need, your business logic need, you need to send emails and all of those things like that. So, and if it's a hosted server, they can have their own mail server already installed. But if you want to do that locally, Mercury is bundled with XAMPP. So the M in MySQL is the M in XAMPP is actually MySQL. The Tomcat is another web server that is used to serve applications. If we are using some sort of programs like Java, we may prefer to use the Tomcat as our web server than Apache. So it's but Tomcat is also from Apache. It's called Apache Tomcat. So Apache has been good to us, and they've given us a whole lot of free enterprise, very good, rich, robust software. No, so when you launch it like that, it just explains the kind of modules that you have here, and then this is how you start it, this is how you configure them, and like that. We are not talking about configurations per se today, so just cut these sessions to not make it unnecessarily long. We are focused basically on design, because you could have used any other tool, not XAMPP. So when we get to that part, when we start talking about working with database itself, then I'm going to come back, and if you're using XAMPP, explain a bit of this. But just at the surface, if you need to configure something, some things are not right, not working, this is where you go and configure each of them. You can say configure, you can monitor the logs and see, just like we are seeing right here. This is the log as the application. So you are seeing that things are working well. When things are not working well, you are also going to also see it here, right here. So you can monitor the logs and all of those things like that. Now, for you to be able to start your and have access to your MySQL on the web browser, you need to start the web server, where, as this is how the XAMPP works, then you have the MySQL running on the web server. So you can see this guy is running on these ports. You guys have been configuring ports for your node servers like that. So you can see, but by default, these are default ports as ported by the developers of the application. So by default, MySQL works on port 3306. By default, Apache, which is a web server, all web servers, work on port 80. That's the web port, the HTTP port, and then port 443 for HTTPS. So HTTPS for secure ports, and for secure web ports, and then 80 for not secure ports, right? So Apache is served and is listening on both ports like that. So one thing you should know is that if an application is already taking one port, another application can use that same port again. So some of you that you currently are just assigning random ports to this application. So if you happen to run two applications at a time, one of them can use a particular port at a time. So if you go and if your MySQL server is started and is running on 3306, in your node you are now assigning 3306, there's going to be a problem. So that I just need to mention that, so you understand a bit of the porting. So we'll come back to that later on. Now, this is started, like I said, just for us to make sense of what we have now. So I just have localhost /phpMyAdmin. That's what this thing here. So I say phpMyAdmin, localhost /phpMyAdmin. So this will open your phpMyAdmin interface. We are not doing PHP. It just happened that because we are using XAMPP, which was bundled with PHP, and we want to use it as a tool to do our ERD. So as a tool to use our ERD. if you are using Workbench, you won't have anything to do with local PHP admin, and you don't even have anything to do with XAMPP. If you are using Visual, you don't have any business. You just jump straight and start doing your stuff, right? So, but I'm using PHP admin, so I hope you get that. Now, if I come here, guys, are we still connected?
Yes,
Yes, sir, we hear.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just jump straight in here. I'll just jump straight into my work here. So I'll create a database. I create a database. I'll call it cohort 4. So let's say I call it cohort 4 ERD, because I'll come back again. So let me say cohort 4 ERD or something like that, whatever name you want to call it. So this will be the name of your project. So in your own case, you name it the name of your project, because that should be the name of your database. So you have it like that. Now because this is the tool I'm using, this is how this tool work. I'm going to create this table like this. So I'll create a table. I'll call it users, and how many fields does it have? I won't exhaust this whole table because it's too much. So I'll just put a few. Sorry, excuse me. I'll just put a few, so you can populate the rest if you like. So I'll come here and just say users fields. Let me say that's 8 fields. So the fields is the number of properties that you have here. Like this one has 25 if we are rolling with this. So if we are rolling with this will be 25. So that is the fields that you are supplying. That's the number of fields. But me, I just want to create for 8, so at least we can close up this session. I'm a bit this thing already. So if we do this, if we click on go, and this will create a field for you. This is if you are using this tool I'm using. Now the first field is ID. The second field maybe is first name. The last field is this next field is last name, not in a particular order. Let's say middle name, then let's say what can I pick? Let's say profile image, let's say email, let's say profile, let's say username, let's say password. Let me use a date. Let's say profile image. Now, so in this tool, if you need to, you can add more. You know, when I started with 8. Now, let's say I discovered that I needed more fields. I can come up here and add more tools. Let's say I want to add 2 more fields. I'll just say add 2 like this. So I have 2 more fields for me here. So let's say I want to have date created, and then let's say created by. So I'll just keep it simple like this. So these are various fields, so you can complete the whole thing that we've got. So the next thing will then be the type of data that you are expecting that fields to be of. So like ID should be numbers. So if you come in here, the various data types are here: int for integers, varchar for strings, text for strings as well. But the strings, this one takes more. This one takes up to 535 characters. That's a lot. And then this one takes a maximum of 535 characters. So depending on what you are expecting in the fields, you are going to put a type. So here the ID, our IDs, we want it to be numbers. For storage reason, we can also use, by the time we start using UUID, you can also use a string as an ID, but string take more space than a number takes, so your database will get filled up quickly. So in most if you buy a server, especially if it's a shared server or even a VPS, it's bound by space, and so they give you a storage space. So if you are using string for your IDs, you are just increase the space. You are not managing the space enough. For some reasons, we are going to be using some IDs as string, but basically they should be kept as integer. But for some reasons, as you learn later on, we'll be using some IDs as string, but we'll be careful about that. So we use it as integer. The ID will be integer. Then the default value is if not defined. So we are not doing database now, so let's just stick to our ARD. We'll keep it as none, but let me just explain a bit. I can't just keep my eyes off it without but let me just talk about it a bit. So the default value is when you receive the data in your database, if the user if it didn't come with the ID, of course they are not going to be the ones supplying their IDs themselves because they don't even know it. So the default value is what should be there if the user did not provide this data. If for instance, if the first name is not provided, what should be there? You can automatically give everybody the same first name if certain thing is not provided. So you can say none is if it's not provided, leave it empty. So if it's not provided, leave it null. Then you can define it as defined. So if you define it like this, you can say Kenny. So for everyone who did not provide their first name, everybody would be a Kenny. But that's not the case. Like I said, all these things I will explain them when let's just deal with ERD and focus on ERD. So we just say as the default none for all of them. We'll leave the collection out. I'll just say, because the ID is going to be first come first serve, and database will be providing itself. So we are going to say this guy is of course this is the primary key. This is the primary key. The ID is the primary key. You say bring this up, I say go, and then auto increment. It will automatically increment itself. The first person that get registered will get ID number 1. The next person gets ID number 2. Automatically the database handles itself. Comment is if you want to put certain comments. Just the other time when I was mentioning statuses, I said some people can say 0 is for 1, so you can put any comment here. You can write any English here. So that's just to just like your comment in your JavaScript, the same thing here. Virtuality, if you want to virtualize it and all of those things. We'll talk about database proper. So design is what we are talking about now. So now I'm done with that first guy. I put what I've done there was just that I gave its type as integer. I said is a primary key, and I said this is going to be an auto increment. The first name I'm going to make it, because it's not a number, it's going to be something alphanumeric. So I make it a varchar, because first name ideally shouldn't be more than 30, but you give an allowance for people who have big names. So let's say you say 30 characters, but normally first name Memuna, Edward, Abbas, these are names. So before you assign length, you need to know either how this would look like. So so this is basically for the ARD, because our Node.js, we are going to be using a code first approach, where we just write model and automatically transform model into the database entity. That's what we're going to be doing. We're not going to be coming to database. But if you work in some kind of environment where they do database first, you transform your ERD into the database, or your database into ERD. That's what we are doing now. So this length is the length of character that would come in here, the maximum length. So maximum length, so a name that is longer, any first name that is longer than 30 will be truncated. So you say maximum character here, you specify also say 30 and let's say middle name can also. So you are saying that someone's name, full name, is almost up to 90. I think you've given a good allowance. So you see that for first name we don't have to come here and say it's primary or none of those things. Although it can be indexed, it can be indexed. As we move along, we'll talk about indexing. For quick search, you can index. So when you guys did data structure algorithm, and we're talking about certain things about trees and all of those things, which work with index. So, but let's just keep it simple so that things don't look unnecessarily complicated. The email address should also be, last name should be Varka. Don't make mistake, because when you if you make middle name an integer, the record will be 000 for even when people are supplying records. You will just be seeing 0 in the database. So the ensure that you use proper data type. So Varka for a middle name, and maximum length you can take is 30. Let's say email is Varka. Let's say the maximum length you can also take is 30. So some people's email can take so let's say you say 40 whatever, and username, let's say you want to enforce that username cannot be more than certain, let's say 10 characters. Let's say password, because you are going to hash this password. Password normally should not be more than 8 characters, but eventually what comes into your database is not the bare password. You won't come to database and be saying password 123. What you see there will be the hash value, and the hash value is the base 24, so base 64. So what you are seeing there is some sort of character that is very long, so you have to make room for it. So you can say it's 224 or 225, so that it covers all kind of hashing technology. Then profile image too. So in profile image, you see some people can use below. That's binary large object. That is when you are saving the image raw into the database. When you're saving the image raw, PDF raw into the database like that. But the best approach is to to upload the image into a folder, and then keep its 5 parts here. So what you're keeping is a string per se. That is, if you use a string, it means that you're just keeping its 5 parts in your database, and then you're keeping the file itself in a particular folder. It's uploaded straight into a folder. But if for some reason you want to save the image straight into the database, then you are going to be using binary large objects, so which is the below. So if it's a video also, you are going to keep it in a below like that. So MySQL now supports multiple and different type of data. They now support JSON, because now we are talking about that MySQL with no SQL. But traditionally, the MySQL doesn't have some of the data types that we have here. But thanks goodness, they now have multiple some sort of advanced data types that helps us to even manage things a lot better and do crazy stuff. Then date created is going to be date time, but we are going to be using timestamp. Date time, but then timestamp. Reason is that we want database to supply it by itself. We are not going to be supplying it. Any record that anything that happens, database the MySQL server automatically creates the time that it happens. It records the timestamp by itself. So you can continue to do whatever it is you are doing. Automatically it records by itself. Then the created by, we want to reference it back to the user ID that created it. So we're going to keep keeping it as an ID, as if it's it's a reference. It's a reference to the user that created it. So it could be the same user that is creating it here, or another user created it. Now this is a sample this thing, so you can finish it up like I said. I'll just keep it like this. Now still, I'm not talking about database, but I'll still talk about what we have here. So there are different type of database engine. You have InnoDB, CSV, and so we'll keep it as InnoDB, and we'll save. We'll save. Once we save this, okay. So this Varka here, because I didn't enter a length for this Varka. So let me say I keep this image length as 40. What did you say?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, oh.
So once you are done, you click
I
on
have a
save.
question, sir.
Yes, go
But
ahead.
I'll ask later.
Ask now,
My personal
please.
sister is down.
Can you
Fine.
ask now? Ask the question now. Can you hear me? Hello, guys. Can you guys hear me?
hear you, sir.
Sir, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. We can hear
Can
you,
you
sir.
ask your
Can hear
question
you.
now?
I was trying to ask a question.
Okay, let me continue. When he comes back, let him ask the question. So,
Okay, sir.
so what we've done here is that we've created a table, a database table. Because of the tool we are using, we are actually having to work too much. Because right now we've created this database table like that. So this database table like this, if you go to, what I really want to do is to view it. So if you go to this thing here, it's collapsed kind of. If you see this, okay, let me browse it. Right, so where is that guy again, chef? Let me put this thing to this side. So you have this is the so the view, where is that guy again?
Structures.
No, the structure is this guy here, but is the I want to see the entity view. Okay, no problem. Yeah, it's from here. This it's on the, I was on the table view, so that's why it wasn't showing. So let me go back to this thing and bring this guy back so you guys can see it the way it was. I was in the table view, so it's not available there. I was inside this user's table view, so it's not available there. So is when you are on database view, when you click on database, that's where it is. So what I'm looking for is really this. When you ensure that what you're having here is database in your database name, you click on more, you see designer. So it was designer I was looking for. So if you click on designer, because right now we are doing database design, then you will see what we've just done. So what we just did is just basically this here, like that. This will have been faster if you're using Workbench. Easy. So all this thing what we're doing is just to create this guy, ID, first name, you can see all like that, and you can see that looks a bit like this. This is a Workbench output, but this one here is what's it called? This one here is this guy output like that, MySQL. So let's create more tables so that we can bring them related together. Now, so go back to your database and we create this thing. Like I said, this tool is making you work too hard. You will create this one here. You create another table. So let's say we call that one rows. That's this table here. This table here, we'll call it rows, and then we'll create another table, users row, and we'll make it many to many, and we'll just end the session like that. So if I come here, I say rows, how many fields? So you count the number of fields. So you see this should be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 if you are keeping all, or 8. This should be 8. But so yeah, we'll soon we are trying to, we'll wrap up now very soon. So
Okay, sir.
if you do this, you have rows. So let me say I just want to keep 5 because you can continue, you can finish it up how many this thing you want to have. So I'll just keep simply have ID, row name, row descriptions, then let's say I want to keep icon, and then let's say date created, then this ID I make it integer, I make it a primary key, I make it auto increment for the ID that is primary. Row name I make it a variable character, and I say a row name cannot be more than, let's say, 50 characters. Row descriptions varchar, let's say the description cannot be more than 100 characters. An icon is an image part, let's say it cannot be more than 100 characters. Date created is timestamp, date time and timestamp, so that the MySQL engine automatically help me to assign it. So I simply do that and click on save. Now I have two tables here. Now if you go look at your designers, you will see two tables. Now you're seeing two tables here in your designer. So if you go back to click on here for your database, then you can create another database. Let's say you call that one users role, users underscore roles, and then this one is asking for how many fields this has. So let's say this has 3 fields basically, and then we say go, and then this one is an ID, and this one is user ID, and then this one is role ID. So all of them will be integer, because this user ID is the ID that was coming from user table, and then this row ID is the one that's coming from row ID. But this guy here, this guy is a primary key, auto increment. So this guy is a foreign key, user ID is a foreign key here. So but what we're going to do is that we just ensure that we say it's is an index, right? So this one is also an index. So in our designer we'll create so in our designer we're going to create a link to this. So we have, say you have this one to be an index, so like that. So once we have this like this, we are done with this table. All we simply need to do is just save it, and then we have 3 tables right here. Now so this guy is also supposed to be an index. So we have user ID and index, row ID and index as well. So the next thing now is, if you go to your database view and go to more, depending on your interface, and you say designer, you'll see 3 entities. Now so you can drag and place them separate, and also, you know, so that's another thing with this useless tool, though it's good, though very good tool, but it's a bit, because they added this thing to it just so that people can say this thing. So you have that, you may have issues dragging up and down. So let's say you have this separated like this. So the next thing you then do is to come up here and create a relationship. This arrow here that you see here, this is how to do it here. On Workbench is a lot this thing, because Workbench was actually built for that. So but if this tool, I'm using it, is the one I have installed here, and my PHP admin is something else, is something that we use eventually, so that's why I'm using this, but it's also very good. So if you create a relationship, click on create a relationship, then select the reference key, so this key here, and you select this one here. So once you select that one there, then it brings this out for you to handle how it should be, how you should treat delete and update. I will just explain a bit, but I will explain more as we are. This is a foreign key relationship. So if a record is deleted, what should it do? Should it also delete the corresponding record in the other entity? Like now you have users who have roles, user manager. Now when that role is no longer needed in our application and someone delete that user manager, should the user what should happen to the user who are currently user manager? Should they be deleted just because a role was deleted, or what should happen? So this is what this guy is asking. On delete, what should happen? So we can say it to say do nothing. So if a user if a row is deleted, you don't because of that delete a user. But if because of that you want to delete a user, then you cascade. So you say no action on update, let's say no action on delete, let's say no action, and we say okay like that. So the moment you do that, you see this relationship, this thing drawn. So you can position it in a way that both of them can be beside each other, and then that arrow effectively points one to the other like that. So similarly, you can bring this guy here, the other guy here, this row here. So and you create a relationship still, create a relationship, and what's happening? So I'm not toggling relationship line, but that guy got taken off because I was no action, go like that. So this create this, then the relationship lines. Okay, I've created two eyes now. So I created it twice. The other one was there, but it was once. It was meant to be once. So when that line disappears, this is one of the also the issue with it. So when the line disappears, possibly you have clicked on the lines, this toggle relationship line. So when you click on it, it goes off and on. So you can come here again and create another line, another relationship. So you say this one here is the what's it called, the reference, and then this guy is the foreign key. On delete, what should happen? Say no action, use no action, you say okay. So that way you have the the line drawn like that. So you can position your stuff so that everything is properly shaped and all of that. And then when you are done, you can actually save and export it to a PDF, and you can export the schema to PDF. You can create a master list of it like that. So if you export, because you are going to be sharing this with us and like that, but before you share it, ensure that it's clean and is well arranged. Well, before you export it, you have to arrange it side by side. I need something as clean as this. Though this is what this guy would give you pretty much by default. So but if you're using phpMyAdmin as well, ensure that you arrange your guide side by side so things show properly. Alright, so guys, at the end of this session we've been able to show how you start from the bottom
Recording
up,
stopped.
how you start from writing down what your entity should have to the point where you jump into any tool of your choice to start documenting your entities and where you create their various relationship. So is there any questions I need to attend to?
Yes, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, please, let's do it. Let's make it snappy. So
I just want to confirm. Yes, I just want to confirm. Like, for example, now I already have my MySQL installed. Now, if I now want to install Workbench, like, can I still make use of the same, like my database in MySQL, will it still appear in the Workbench or it will disrupt everything?
No, you can work with your Workbench. So
Recording in progress.
you can work with your Workbench. So if you are installing a different database with Workbench, you can just configure it to work with on another port. So you can keep multiple MySQL database on your system. So the default one works with 3306. So when you're creating another database with Workbench, because it has like a bundled database like that, so you can configure that one to work with port 3307. You understand?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
And does that mean that Workbench comes with its own database?
Yeah, pretty much. It has a database component.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So guys, I would ensure that I send this video across for our reference. Mr. Shan's own might be faster, but I am sure it's incomplete, and because of internet disruptions as well, it may not be as smooth as this might be. But this is a lot. I have to break it and send it. So I hope we understand something from this session.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, sir. I want to ask a question, sir.
Be fast.
Yes, sir. When we are doing our ARD and FRD, when we started our various projects, that time we are using all this qpen.io to draw this ARD diagram. So I now want to know, like, is there any major advantage in using this exam and everything to do it instead of using those tools, sir?
You can use any tool of your choice.
Okay, sir.
You can use any tool of your choice. If your approach is database first, if the approach of your eventual project is database first, then this one here, this phpMyAdmin approach will be the best bet, because you are doing two things at a time. You are creating the ARD and you are creating your database. If you are creating your ARD, your database created immediately, you can start working with it as it is. You understand? That is when, but our approach is not going to be database first approach. It's going to be code first. You understand?
Recording stopped.
You understand? It's going to be code first approach. So for database first approach, phpMyAdmin approach or this things tool might be the best bet. So you guys have done ERD before?
No, sir.
Well, most of just say when they are doing ERD.
Like the diagram that we came up with, the FRD diagram for our projects.
The functional requirement diagram. Functional requirement document.
Yeah, we are doing all this.
Use case diagram. Use case diagram you drew.
Yeah, use case diagram. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
So, guys, thank you for being attentive. I hope we get it right, and I'm hoping to reviewing your ERDs tomorrow. I'll be waiting to review your ARDs tomorrow. So safe to say that there won't be a peer learning review this afternoon. This is one already. So you guys should, after this session, rest a bit and come back to the material. So thank you guys. The WhatsApp group is open for any question relating to what you are doing, and this for the materials that have been dropped. Thank you very much. So Mr. Shams,
Mr. Kenny, Mr. Kenny has released you. He said there's no peer learning session today. Of course, this is 1 o'clock and time is past 10. So you guys need to go and rest and return to the material. Those of you that are having diary sessions will meet by 5. Those people that are presenting OKS, our time is 8. All of that people go and rest and go to the material. Mamona.
Sir, sorry, I didn't unmute.
Please report immediately.
Okay, sir.
So that we can sort out this Lagos Wala. So, God bless you. Thank you very much.
All right, guys.
Mr. Kenny, which one did you say we should send? This one or your own?
I will send my own, but it will take time.